overwhelming with emotion. The music, this is one of the best scenes in cinema history. Hello and welcome to Will Watches. This is 1917. So I did a bunch of stuff for Halloween. I thought I'd do something for Remembrance Day too. This is actually one of my favourite war films, if not my favourite war film, which I'll explain more in the commentary. So before we get into this, be sure to check out the Patreon page. Over there you can find 1 week early access. You can also find polls so you can vote for what's next. And you can find a full-length version of the commentary where you can watch along with me and just sync up your own footage. So yeah, let's just jump right in. I love the music in this as well, actually. I think that's really underappreciated.
No, Dodo. No, Sarge.
I know they try and hide the cuts so well, but I'm going to be looking out for them still.
Tastes like old shit. Cheer up.
That's what everything tasted like back then, didn't it? I mean, in the war.
My leave got cancelled. They say why? No idea. It's easier not to go back at all.
Yeah, returning after already being there must be harder. I do wonder if there was a cut there with them going past. If it was very well hidden.
Must be something big if the general's here.
Okay, that was pretty seamless there. I thought there was a cut there from what I remember, like it kind of cuts to black, but that seemed much more seamless than I remember.
Deliver this to Colonel Mackenzie. It is a direct order to call off tomorrow morning's attack. If you don't, it will be a massacre. 1,600 men, your brother among them.
It's such a simple concept, actually. Just them going from A to B. That's all the film is. That's all they have to do, go from A to B. Of course, it's the journey along the way. But then they also bring in the emotional connection with Blake's brother as well. I mean, like, keeping, like, the main premise so simple like that really works well. Especially when it's getting from A to B and this film is all supposed to be, like, one continuous shot, you know?
Blake, let's talk about this for a minute. Why?
Yeah, and Blake straight in, of course, he's got to go save his brother. That's really like the catalyst to get it moving.
9 miles will take us, what, 6 hours? 8 at the very most. So we've got time to wait until the sun sets.
It's enemy territory.
But you might as well use as much time as you have.
You don't remember the song? Not really.
Come on.
Yeah, it's just blacked out of his memory.
We don't know, sir, but we've got orders to cross here.
That is the German front line.
We know, sir.
And this film is just stacked with like random cameos. Adam Scott, Benedict Cumberbatch, you know.
There are aerials of the new line that
Shut up. We fought and died over every inch of this fucking place. Now they suddenly give us miles. It's a trap.
I mean, exactly, it's a trap. They're setting up a trap.
I do hate losing these to the Hun, so when they start shooting at you, could you be so kind as to throw it back? Cheerio.
Really setting the mood. Really encouraging, isn't it? It must be just, you know, it's just such a horrible experience. They've already crawled through a bit of mud there, so they're going to be wet and damp for this whole journey now. That really like slows you down, makes you a bit sluggish as well, probably. Oh. They do a good bit of setup here with that. Oh, there you go. Like, obviously it's disgusting, but it is a great bit of setup as well, because, you know, you see that, you think, oh, his hands got infected now, he's gonna be the first one to die because he's infected like that, but it's not actually the case. There's a bit of a bait and switch. Whenever something comes past the frame like that tree, I'm always thinking, oh, was there a cut there, you know? And I think they probably do that sometimes with, like, they put something across the screen and they don't put a cut there to make the actual cuts blending more. So you're more, like, aware of the visual language or things coming across the frame like that. Roger Deakins, you know, the camera work here is just so great. We've followed them so close so far, and then we have this little moment where they're a bit further away, but we're still seeing the consequences of what's happening with all these bodies in the water. Just going so low against the water is so cool. I think that one there is very obviously a cut. It seems like the perspective isn't exactly correct there as it comes around that rock. And the music building up this bit of tension here. Yeah, just for the release of there being no one there. And that's one thing as well, the music, because it's one continuous sequence, the film, the music kind of has to be as well. It has to be this ebb and flow continually throughout the film.
Patch it up. He'll be wanking again in no time.
I do love their banter together. And they're still here. Well, they were here recently. I think, you know, the long shot is a really great way of building the suspense, because I feel like in films a lot of the times when you have like ones like these very long continuous takes, sometimes they're used to build tension, but because this is the whole film, it's like it's building tension throughout the whole film. I mean, definite cut there, you know, it fades to black completely for a frame or two there.
Look at this.
I do love the variety in the environments throughout the film too. It, you know, keeps you engaged. They start off in the trenches, then they're here in this underground bit, then there's some fields later and forests. I do like that actually. You know, we don't actually see much of the enemy in person throughout this film, but that does humanize them a little bit, seeing that family photo there. Because I think it's important not to dehumanize the enemy, because at the end of the day, it was still humans that made all these decisions and made all these mistakes that led to this war.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, no.
Yeah, that rat just screwed them over.
Go! Wake up! Wake up!
They do kind of fake us out of Schofield's death a few times. Like here, you know, he could have died there, and then the setup with his hand.
But we have to jump!
This is such a great moment, this tension here.
You're going to have to jump! Just jump! I can't see!
You can't see a thing. Yeah, like, you don't know how far to jump, how high you gotta jump. It's so scary not being able to see like that. Just having to trust Blake's voice entirely.
Stop! Just let me stand.
Yeah, Schofield needs a second to recover here. Yeah, for shots like that, I wonder if there's a cut in between and they just like rotoscope Blake still in there for a few frames, you know?
I didn't know what I was picking you for. No, you didn't. You never know. That's your problem.
I mean, like, Schofield's a bit whiny here, but he, you know, he's got all this adrenaline in him. He's just been through all of that.
I thought they were going to send us back up the line or for food or something.
Yeah, it could have been for something positive, couldn't it? You can really see, you know, Blake's compassion and empathy here. Like, he even gives Schofield some of his water. He's actually, like, a nice person. I think this film is just like a real masterclass in pacing as well. Of course, they have to keep the pacing really tight because they need to plan every single shot out perfectly. We have lots of these moments of suspense like there, and then a few moments to calm down after, to just chill out a bit. And we get more time to get to know the characters, get to see their banter together, them telling their stories. That's one of the best bits about this film, actually, just Blake and Schofield together.
Keep your eyes on the trees. Top of the ridge.
And that kind of makes the audience look at this ridge behind them as well, doesn't it?
He slathers it all over his barnet, goes to sleep, and in the middle of the night, he wakes up, and a rat is sitting.
It's a great story. I wonder if that's a true story, because I know Sam Mendes, he interviewed a lot of people for this. There's a lot of things in here that are based on real events. I wonder if this story is like actually a story he heard from an ex-soldier.
He put so much bloody oil on himself that he couldn't wash it off. He was like a magnet.
And you can see Schofield actually enjoying himself a little bit there. That lifted the spirits a bit.
Heading back home. I wonder what they saw.
But then they hit with the reality of war just like that again, you know? These moments of levity contrasting with these moments of fear.
Swapped it with a French captain.
For what?
Bottle of wine.
You kind of see how disenfranchised with everything that Schofield is, you know? He doesn't care about these medals or anything.
Men have died for that.
When you're in the moment like that and you're thirsty, all that matters is drinking, yeah.
It's just a bit of bloody tin. It doesn't make you special. It doesn't make any difference to anyone.
And he probably doesn't think he deserved it as well, does he?
I hated going home. When I knew I couldn't stay. When I knew I had to leave. And they might never see me.
Yeah, it makes it even harder knowing you have to return. Returning for good is great, but returning for just a small stint like that... Like, imagine how hot... They must have planned the scene around the environment here, going from that bit of forest through the field, reaching this building. Unless there were cuts in there and they actually did swap like the environment they were in. Because there's no way you could have written that, planned it out, and then found a location for it that fits perfectly into that timing, right? I like having, you know, Blake and Schofield because they can choose who to follow. We're not just following one person throughout the whole of the film. You know, that scene, walking through the house, they chose to follow Schofield, but they could have chosen to follow what Blake was doing through there as well, you know. They can mix it up. It's not just following one character for the entirety of the film. Of course, in a bit, it's just going to be Schofield from now on. I love this because you can't really tell how far away they are. You know, you can tell it's kind of far. And then you lose this one over the horizon. You know, suddenly it's right there. I mean, you know, that is probably the most unrealistic thing in the film. The coincidence that it lands like right where they are. But you gotta give them a bit of leeway, don't you?
We should put him out of his misery.
No, get him some water. He needs water.
And it is, you know, it is Blake's compassion that is his downfall, isn't it?
No, no, no!
And what was he thinking? They were helping him, you know?
We have to get to an aid post.
I can't!
I'll carry you. It isn't very far.
Just bring a doctor here!
Yeah, there's no time to get a doctor and come back.
Get up!
Yeah, like getting him up on his feet is a good idea. I think Schofield, he does a good job here. He does like everything he can.
Come on. That's it. Come on. Come on. Come on.
It's great as well. I wonder how they actually got his face to go whiter and whiter like that. Because, you know, it's all one continuous shot, isn't it? Just look how much blood there is, yeah.
They're embers.
I love this with the fire behind them as well. I wish the shot was just like a little bit lower so we could have this whole barn on fire behind them. How epic would that look?
He was stabbed.
And you can see how much Blake, you know, he's starting to lose it a bit. He's asking all of these questions that should be obvious. It's actually surprising how early in the film this happens as well.
Tell me you know the way.
I know the way.
But this also kind of acts as a wake-up call for Schofield as well, doesn't it? He wasn't really like fully invested in this mission as much as Blake was. Obviously, Blake was after his brother, but now he knows he's got to go do it for Blake's sake, to find Blake's brother. You know, Blake, he is such kind of like an innocent, well-meaning character. It's kind of like the death of innocence for the film, isn't it?
You all right, mate?
It's all right. It's okay.
Yeah, they show up just like 5 minutes too late.
I have an urgent message for the 2nd Evans. Orders to stop tomorrow morning's attack.
And where are they stationed?
Just beyond Akust.
You never get to see Mark Strong's face, so just build him up a bit there. And that's just the nature of war, you just gotta move on like that.
May I tell you something that you probably already know? It doesn't do to dwell on it.
Yeah, not yet anyway. You know, there's time to process it, but if you start grieving now, you're just gonna be swallowed up by it, aren't you?
Boy, you could have taken my teeth out with that.
You could do with a new set.
You know, all these boys, they've got banter, that's like all they have to keep them going sometimes, isn't it?
Try it in reverse. Reverse! Stop! Stop!
You can see how much he's like taking charge now, you know? You can see how committed to it he is now.
No, we haven't got the time. We all need to push. Come on. Come on!
Yeah, he's the only one who really cares. Look at the rest of them.
Come on, boys. 1, 2, 3.
One thing I've seen people, they praise this film for is having the Sikhs here, having a representation of having the Sikhs helping out.
Here, driver, how about you try to keep it on the bloody road for a change? Oh, piss off.
Oh, piss off.
There were 2 of us.
So now it's down to you.
Yes.
You can see he's got that stiff upper lip. He isn't letting it infect him in front of these other guys.
I mean, who machine guns cows?
Ones with extra bullets.
Bastards.
And they just kill the cows to stop the others having that resource, I guess.
How long gone do you reckon they are?
Why? Worried we'll catch up with them?
I thought he was going to say fancy a burger.
If you do manage to get to Colonel Mackenzie, make sure there are witnesses. But some men just want the fight.
Yeah, setting up here that Mackenzie, he still wants to do it, still wants to go ahead with it. I love that. An hour in and this is the first gunshot. Well, the first enemy gunshot. Because he did shoot that German. There was already tension there in that scene, and there's a jump scare of the gunshot. You almost forget that they all have guns, because there's so little gunfire in that first half. It's funny, the music here is like surprisingly modern. It sounds like there's like a synth or something on there. You'd think then maybe they'd want to make it all acoustic instruments because of the time period, you know? But it still works really well, of course. And there's your first cut. You know, they say there's no cuts, or it's designed to be no cuts, but there is this one cut, and I think it does do a really good job because it marks kind of the halfway point of the movie, but it also provides that time skip to really build the tension towards the end. Because if it, you know, it's only a 2-hour movie, so he would have got there in loads of time if there wasn't this time jump here. But we're still kind of following it from real time from Schofield's perspective, aren't we? And then this scene, there is this kind of like surrealism to it almost. The way the flares light the scene, of course. But then the music is just so beautiful to match with it. I love the violin here. And I've seen the, they like fully built out this town and mapped where the flares would go so they could plan how to light it properly. There's so much work went into this. And I love how just overwhelming the music almost is here. The music's kind of been in the background so far, and then they bring it in here. Just the contrast is great. I don't actually know who does the score in this, if it's someone famous. I mean, obviously it's someone famous, but is it like a super well-known figure like Hans Zimmer or anyone? Yeah, I think that flare scene might be one of my favourite scenes in the whole movie. I mean, this is just gorgeous, this fire and him silhouetted like that. This film does feel like it's almost this sequence of set pieces throughout, isn't it? it's just, yeah, is it friend or foe? Oh, that's great, just only having his face illuminated.
C'est Auguste.
Où sont les autres?
Others.
It's good to have that little bit of French knowledge. I mean, they must learn some in the army as well, right? They must teach them some of the basics.
Assieds-toi.
He can't take too long to stop though, can he? Yeah, so good, these moments of human, these moments to stop in between the kind of relentless action of it all. Yeah, it's just awful. She's just...
Je ne sais pas.
just found this abandoned baby, having to look after it.
I have food.
There's great setup, him getting the milk earlier on.
You can have them. Here, take them all.
And it makes his load lighter as well, doesn't it?
Elle a besoin de lait.
Milk?
Yeah, and he has the milk.
Children? You?
Yeah, he just kind of avoids the question, doesn't he? I'm surprised there were actually these soldiers in Akust, because I thought they'd all, you know, retreated and they'd set up that trap. I guess a few had just stayed behind here. And this one, they're just silhouetted, so you can't really tell who's who during this fight. That's at one point you do think it's actually Schofield that gets killed here. At least sometimes I get confused for this bit. I mean, that isn't Schofield's first kill, but you know, he had to go hand to hand for that, and it's a lot different than just shooting someone, isn't it? Like, at least psychologically. This is such a great moment as well, him just running through this abandoned city, being chased down. That's such a great moment, always on the edge of my seat there, running out to that water. I mean, he's just gotta, you know, go with the flow, yeah. I mean, the flow is down a waterfall here, but he's got to go with the flow to reach the trees that he was talking about anyway. Yeah, just like Blake said earlier, the petals, the white petals, being like snow. This film has a lot of moments of just like calm and beauty as well, you know? It's not just 100% the misery of war the entire time. You've got kind of the beauty of nature in here as well. But you do have that juxtaposition. You've got the beauty of all these petals landing on these bodies floating in the river. That is just awful, having to swim over them like this. Yeah, it's just so overwhelming how much he's been through in the last, you know, well, just 2 hours from his perspective. And again, it's like this moment is almost surreal. This song is so good in the trailer as well. From what I remember, the trailer, they have this song while he's doing the run scene, you know, the famous run scene. But they like epic it up a bit.
I am a poor wayfaring stranger.
It's like this moment, you're almost looking through the crowd to see if there's someone that looks like Blake that could be his brother, you know?
Toil, no danger in that bright light.
You see, you know, they all look so young, don't they? Most of them probably late teens.
I have to find the Devons. We're the Devons.
Yeah, at this point he just thinks all is lost. It's that moment of hope.
Why haven't you gone over? We're the second wave.
They don't send us all at once.
Oh, I hear the music coming in.
Boy, steady on, mate. Where you going?
Oh, this music is just so great. He's so close to his goal now. Daylight's already broke. Yeah, boys, they just have no clue. They're just like, who's this guy pushing through?
We're about to go over. We've got them on the run. You don't. Please don't send your men over. Get out of the way! These are direct orders from Army Command. Where is Colonel Mackenzie? Jesus Christ, man! Go and see the captain.
Yeah, he's just like so close, but so far. Is these people discouraging him? Like, no, we're so close. We gotta go over. They don't know what's ahead of them.
7 platoons on the second!
The realization, oh, this is so good. He knows what he's got to do.
Can't possibly make.
This music just matches it so perfectly.
No, 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 no.
There is. I love this scene so much. It's just overwhelming with emotion. The music, the whole film's been hyping up to this moment, you know. And then just the scale, the epicness of it, yeah. Like, he's failed this first wave, but he can stop the rest. I mean, this is one of the best scenes in cinema history.
Let me through!
All this way, and they still try and stop him. They almost stop him.
This attack is not to go ahead. You have been ordered to stop. You have to stop.
Who the hell are you?
Yeah, so brash, it almost causes the rest of these guys to die.
The Germans planned this, sir. They've been planning it for months. They want you to attack.
Yeah, it's all a trap.
I hoped today might be a good day. Hope is a dangerous thing.
It's just another day, isn't it, for them? Just another day of war.
Have someone see to your wounds. A fuck off, Lance Corporal.
That's it. He comes all of that way for a fuck off.
Well done, lad.
At least he does get some reward, some congratulations from this guy.
You know where Lieutenant Blake is, sir?
Blake?
There were two of us. I was sent here with his brother.
Yeah, it's like the film, it's got these two goals. There's the grander, more high stakes goal, which is stopping the attack. Then there's the more personal stakes goal of finding Blake's brother. So, you know, even if he stops the attack like he's done, at least stop the second wave, they can still have some defeat in the personal stakes, you know? I think that's a good way to do it, because sometimes when films are so high stakes, you kind of know that they can't, you know, lose the high stakes one. Like in a film where the end of the world's on the line, you're like, well, of course the world's not going to end, or there's going to be something that fixes it.
Sergeant, I had to find Lieutenant Blake. Do you know where he is? No.
Everyone's just so unhelpful, aren't they? I mean, they're just looking out for themselves, aren't they?
I was sent here to deliver a message. Yates, you must know my brother.
Oh, yeah, he's so full of hope here, isn't he?
It was very quick. I'm sorry.
I think, you know, after that really hype moment, the run, this just brings you back to the reality of war. The family members lost.
If I may, I'd like to write to your mother. Tell her that Tom wasn't alone.
You know, you can see he's still trying to be stoic, still trying to hold it together.
He was a good man. Always telling funny stories. He saved my life.
Oh, I'm glad you were with him. Thank you, Will.
He just bookends it perfectly, him sitting under a tree just like it started, but without Blake this time, obviously. And it confirms, you know, the question he avoided earlier about his own family. He's got a wife and kid. I can just imagine like the sun, feeling the sun on your face, like in that moment to finally decompress. Yeah, and of course it's Sam Mendes' granddad or something who got a lot of the stories from. Okay, so that was 1917. I think it's safe to say that is my favourite war film. I'm quite openly critical of a lot of war films, especially, you know, the few that I've done on the channel have been really good, but I've mentioned, you know, I'm critical of war films just because of how they play into kind of the propaganda of war, and especially American war films when Americans are the focus, is the whole American industrial military complex and how they fund some of these films. So it feels a bit less like propaganda to me, at least, when it's UK focused like this rather than American focus or focusing on American soldiers. I don't know if here in the UK we have the same kind of thing they do in America, where films that use military equipment are partially funded by the military, and that gives the military like some creative control over the movie. I don't know if we're like that as well, but I definitely know that's a big thing in America. And I do think even if a lot of these war films have anti-war messages, there is still like a little bit of glorification of things, you know, even if it's just like the camaraderie and the brotherhood happening between soldiers, that still, you know, there are people who see that and they enjoy that, and that could contribute to people signing up for the military. You know, even films that are anti-war can glorify like some aspects of war. But there are a few things I like that this film does. I think first off, the main focus is on saving people. You know, the focus of the film really isn't like how evil the enemy is, how evil the Germans are. The focus is we need to get here because there's a trap set and we need to save all of these lives. The main focus is on saving lives rather than, you know, going somewhere to blow something up or going to defeat someone else, you know? So I really enjoy that. And also with like Mackenzie, Benedict Cumberbatch's character, they show kind of the incompetence of some of the higher ups. It's not like the British guys were completely all good. He was kind of in it just for the fight. Of course he does change his mind, but he almost sent over the second wave as well. His incompetence was almost like a big factor there. He's almost like a little bit of an antagonist to the film that is British. And I do think by the nature of the film, it just following Schofield so closely, they don't really have any opportunity to show the Germans. You know, the Germans, it could be anyone they're fighting really. It's just they're there to fire a few guns at him, get in a tussle with him. You know, we never really see the other side of the story, I guess. And like I said in the reaction, I think it's good to not entirely dehumanize the enemy, because when you dehumanize, you kind of separate them. I mean, that's what dehumanize means. You separate them from human beings. It kind of makes them like this force of pure evil. But I think it's important to remember that all of these acts were committed by humans, and because of that, you need to acknowledge that there are ways people are manipulated. How are these people manipulated into having certain beliefs and things like that? Just completely dehumanizing the enemy is a bit too black and white for reality, because when it's that black and white, you kind of forget how people can be manipulated. And I think it's scarier when you acknowledge that these were acts committed by humans, not just these, you know, evil monsters, if you personify them as like just pure evil, you know? I think the film just does a great job with tension as well. For me, I've said in a few reactions, it's very hard for me to feel tension. I think a film has to be really extremely tense for me to be invested and feel the tension. But here, it just works so well for me. I'm so invested in it. And I think part of that is the nature of the film. This one shot, this fabricated one shot, where we're just following them throughout this whole journey. I think it just gives you this time to really like lean into the characters. You're kind of in the character's head, you know, we're with them the entire time. How can you not be invested in them? And then in combination with the music, which I did look up, it was Thomas Newman. He was great, his music was great. Kind of in combination with that, there's just all of these emotions swirling, as you saw in the running scene. It's just kind of overwhelming, all of this emotion, all of this hope, all of this dread. Is he gonna get there on time? This like hype, you know, and that's me getting emotional over a scene that isn't really particularly emotional. It's not like a character has died and then watching a character die. It's just this like scene that's supposed to be epic, where I'm just kind of overwhelmed by the hype. There's very few films that can do that to me. The only other film where I've been overwhelmed by hype to like tears is probably Avengers Endgame, the portal scene, where it was just so overwhelming, and they have the music coming in as well, you know. But that running scene is just so good, and of course it's become iconic at this point. Other things have referenced it. I think it was Sex Education that referenced it as well. Of course, I know that little tidbit about the characters who like bumped into him, and that wasn't scripted, but that ended up working out really well in the end, didn't it? And you know, there is just like so much planning that went into this, getting the timing perfect for all of these shots to line up, from walking from A to B. I know they said on average like each shot is like 8 minutes long in between the cuts, so they have to plan like how fast the characters walk for 8 minutes to get to this point where they would find a place to put a cut in. And the pacing of this works so well. It's very kind of slow at the start, and it's just building up and building up, and there are these kind of peaks and troughs throughout as well, where there's a bit of action and then a calm moment, and it's just constantly rising and rising to right towards the end, where there's just this great moment, this great scene of him just running through that field. It's just so good. And then with the music and everyone's running behind him, you know, he's kind of failed part of his mission. He failed the first wave. There were still some survivors of the first wave, but he did succeed. Like overall, I don't know how many waves there were supposed to be, if it was just 2. Like he definitely saved the second wave. There were still some casualties. He only kind of partially succeeded, but it was still so good. And like I said during the reaction with the stakes, you know, you have the more personal stakes and you have the bigger stakes. He kind of half failed the bigger stakes, and then he fulfilled the emotional stakes of finding the brother, but of course Blake wasn't there with him, you know, so it's kind of like a bittersweet reunion there. I wouldn't say reunion, it's just bittersweet, that moment. Of course, Roger Deakins, he is just a spectacular DOP, director of photography. He does great here. You know, as I said, there's so much planning that has to go into this, but also planning around having these like beautiful set pieces. There's those grand set pieces, but there's also those like small, beautiful moments where the planning just must have been insane, you know? Like the whole sequence with the flares flying over, that is one of my favorites in the movie. And when he's in this town and the cathedral is on fire and he's just like silhouetted by the fire, it's just gorgeous. You know, it's one thing to have all of these shots flowing into each other to create the illusion of one shot, but then it's also just even more difficult on top of that to make the whole thing as beautiful as it is as well. It's just such a great work of art. One thing I also love is the camaraderie. You know, we don't actually have that much of Blake in the film, but I love his little stories, you know, telling the story of the guy who got his ear bitten off by a rat. It's really just like endearing and connects you to the characters, and I think they do a good job with that kind of bait and switch, because you think it's gonna be Schofield that dies. They set it up with his hand, and then they set it up, you think, oh, maybe he's died in the explosion in the underground, and then after that he's quite kind of grumpy. Of course he is, you know, he's quite whiny, he's complaining about why did you choose me for this mission, but I think that leads for some great character growth as well, because he starts off quite whiny and reluctant to do the mission, but by the end he is so all in on the mission. You know, he's got to save all of these people, you know, because he's got so little time there. And then one last thing that's kind of unrelated, but I wanted to mention it just to get other people's opinions. I'm wearing a poppy, of course, that, you know, it celebrates the people who lost their lives, the soldiers who lost their lives, but there's also white poppies, which I was considering getting, which have more of an anti-war stance, which I definitely agree with, and they also commemorate people people who died in war that weren't necessarily soldiers, so civilians and children and service animals, you know, they celebrate those as well, not just soldiers. So I was considering that, because that is something I agree with, but I've seen there's quite a lot of controversy around it. I know the red poppy is controversial in Ireland as well, but there was controversy around the white poppy because people say it kind of takes away, and I didn't really agree with that until I heard another argument that kind of compared it to All Lives Matter, where you're saying there's this day of celebration celebrating the soldiers and people are using it as an agenda to celebrate something else and kind of take away. So I'm really not sure on that. Like, I obviously agree war is bad and we should celebrate everyone who died at war, but maybe doing the white poppies on Remembrance Day is a bit insensitive. I'm not quite sure where I stand on that yet, so I'd like to hear your opinions on that. Do you agree with the white poppies, or do you think there should be a separate day for that? So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, consider leaving a like or commenting your thoughts. What did you think of the film? And if you really love this, be sure to subscribe so you can keep up to date for all of the future uploads. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.